So today's Bhagavatam verse is from the 9th Canto, Chapter 2. And I'm going to read the 3 verses, only the English, because I'm going to come to another topic soon. O king, from Agniveshya came a Brahminical dynasty known as Agniveshyayana. Now that I've described the descendants of Narishanta, let me describe the descendants of Dishta. Please hear from me. Dishta had a son by the name Nabhaga. This Nabhaga, who was different from the Nabhaga described later, became a Vaishya by occupational duty. The son of Nabhaga was known as Balandana. The son of Balandana was Bataspriti, and his son was Pramshu. Pramshu's son was Pramati. Pramati's son was Kanitra, and Kanitra's son was Chakshusha, and his son was Vivimshati. Let me move my window up here so I can read the text. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada to Bhagavatam 9.23 and 24. From Manu, one son became a Kshatriya, another a Brahmana, and another a Vaishya. This confirms the statement by Narada Muni, Yasya yal lakshanam proktam pumso varna abhya va vanjakam. Bhagavatam 7.11.35. One should always remember that Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas should never be regarded as members of a caste by birth. This emphasis in blue, I put it. A Brahmana may be changed into a Kshatriya, and a Kshatriya into a Brahmana. Similarly, a Brahmana or Kshatriya may be changed into a Vaishya, and a Vaishya into a Brahman or a Kshatriya. So this point, Srila Prabhupada makes again and again, quoting from so-called caste system which prevails today is not the divine caste system that was set up by Sri Krishna himself. And that caste system is not by birth. So all these designations, the varnas and the ashramas, they're not by birth. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas. In fact, the Shastra says that in Kali Yuga, all of us are born Shudras. We have to be promoted and trained into the position of Brahmanas. Continuing that purport, this is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvaranyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So one is a Brahman, Kshatriya, or Vaishya never by birth, but by quality. There is a great need of Brahmanas. Therefore, in the Krishna consciousness movement, we are trying to train some Brahmanas to guide society is lost. Because practically everyone is a Kshudra, no one at the present moment can guide the members of society to the proper path by which to achieve perfection in life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Deenataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschati Deshanane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So yesterday, we had a wonderful class by Her Grace Achyuta Devi, my dear friend and god sister, and she spoke about Srila Madhavendra Puri. And today is actually the disappearance of Srila Madhavendra Puri. So I don't want to repeat almost anything that she said, but I do want to connect the purports that we read today with Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and the pastimes of Srila Madhavendra Puri. So I will go back to sharing. So immediately when I read this purport, the discourse between Srila Ramananda Rai and Lord Chaitanya came to mind when Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda Rai as he had begun his South India journey. So Ramananda Rai at that time externally was the governor of the province, and Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Rai met, and they had a wonderful discourse that started with Lord Chaitanya asking Sri Ramananda Rai to speak on what is the ultimate goal of life. And that discourse actually spans the entire Madhya Leela chapter 8, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not going to go into that in great detail. In fact, that discourse is itself the subject of like an entire seminar, 3, 4, 5-part series, because it's so deep. But I'm going to touch on it briefly and then connect it to the subject that I wanted to talk about today. So first, when Srila Ramananda Rai was asked by Lord Chaitanya, what is the ultimate goal of life? He said, Varnashram Dharma, practicing the dharma of Varnashram, which is the 4 Varnas, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and the 4 ashramas, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. Practicing that as prescribed in the Vedas can deliver the ultimate perfection. So Lord Chaitanya, when he heard this, in one sense, what Ramananda Rai said is true. But in spiritual life, Srila Prabhupada taught us that there is perfection, there is more perfect, and then there is the most perfect. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to go beyond what he considered external. So then he pressed Srila Ramananda Rai to go deeper. And then Ramananda Rai said, well, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, do everything as an offering to me. So whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you offer, whatever austerities you perform, do them as an offering to me, Krishna says to Arjuna. So Lord Chaitanya was pleased when he heard this. But he said, go deeper, go deeper. What is the ultimate goal of life? So Srila Ramananda Rai then said, he went to the point of surrender. Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksheshyami ma suchaha. Abandon all duties and simply surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all reactions. Never fear, he tells Arjuna. So Ramananda Rai said, well, the duty of a jiva is to abandon all scriptural and ritual duties and simply develop detachment from matter by surrendering to Krishna. So this pleased Lord Chaitanya more. And he said, but there is more. Go ahead, go deeper. And so Ramananda Rai came to the point of this. Render pure devotional service without attachment to even the subtle fruits of knowledge or liberation, jnana or moksha. So don't think of any fruits, just render pure devotional service without attachment to getting anything back in return. When Lord Chaitanya heard this, he was so pleased. He says, yes, you are on the right track. And he said, this is what I was getting at. But there are more layers to this. So please go deeper and deeper. So Ramananda Rai then next went into how the bhakti that a jiva feels, or the devotional service, the loving sentiment in the heart that a jiva or a living entity feels for the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna, is practiced in one of 5 loving exchanges and is called Prema Bhakti, devotional service performed with love, not as a matter of ritual, not as a matter of duty, but simply out of love and for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And these 5 loving exchanges, we've heard Shantaras serving Krishna in neutrality, and we see examples of that in the birds, the bees, the animals, the trees, the stones of Vraj. Then you have Dasya, which is servitude. Then you have Sakhya, which is friendship. You see all the cowherd boys. And then you have Vatsalya, which is parental affection, the elderly gopis and gopas, and especially Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai. And then the ultimate, which is Madhurya, which is viewing Krishna in the mood of a lover. And that's called Madhurya love or Madhurya Bhav or conjugal love. So Lord Chaitanya was extremely happy when he heard this. And then he said, go deeper. And then Ramananda Rai said, Madhurya or conjugal love is the highest. It encapsulates the loving sentiments that are felt in the other four rasas or moods described before. But it's the highest pinnacle. And of that conjugal love, the love of the gopis for Krishna in Vrindavan is the highest. And of all the gopis, the love of Srimati Radharani is the very pinnacle of divine love for Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he heard this, he was in the absolute ecstasy, the highest ecstasy of divine love. And he urged Ramananda Rai, go deeper, tell me more. You are absolutely hitting the nail on the head. Well, I'm paraphrasing, he didn't say nail on the head. But he was very happy with Ramananda Rai. And so Ramananda Rai, at a couple of points along the way, he stopped and he said, oh Lord, I'm just a puppet in your hands. You are making me speak these high words. I have no qualification whatsoever, but you're playing on me as a stringed instrument. I'm the instrument in your hand. And by your empowerment, I'm speaking these words. And to be honest, when I was preparing this class, I was struck by how alien all these concepts are to me personally, who am just a beginner on the path of Krishna Bhakti. But, when I discussed this with my wife, Sri Radhika, yesterday and bounced it off her, she reminded me, she said, we are imperfect, but if we repeat the words of the perfect, which is the words of the previous acharyas, starting with our Srila Prabhupada, and what I'm repeating is really from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's Chaitanya Charitamrita, then even if we are imperfect, then our words will carry meaning because we are following in the footsteps of the acharyas. So in that mood, I'm going to offer the following few slides, and then when I take off the slides and I speak, it's all as an offering, and I simply cannot do it without all of your blessings. So I beg for permission and blessings to proceed. So Mahaprabhu is now in absolute raptures, and he's urging Srila Ramananda Rai to go even deeper than this. And then Ramananda Rai talks about Prema Vilas Vivarta, and he talks about the kinds of conjugal love. And he specifically mentions love in union and love in separation. And this love in separation is called Vipralamba Bhav. And in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, the tradition that comes from Lord Chaitanya, this love in separation is identified as the absolute highest love that a soul can feel for the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna. You see, there's a concept of absolute in mathematics in this world. And some of you might remember it from your school days or might be mathematicians and actually know this. But absolute simply means that if the number is a -5 or a +5, it means the same. And you show that with two lines to the side of that number to show that this is an absolute number. And in spiritual life, it is described that love in union is ecstatic. So when the gopis meet with Shyam Sundar, they are in absolute ecstasy. But even higher is the love in separation, because the love in separation has that delicious feeling of anticipation, has that feeling of desperation that I don't know where you are, Murlidhar. I cannot live even a second without you. And that love in separation is what is the ultimate expression of divine love. And it's found in its highest form in the mood of Srimati Radharani towards her beloved Murlidhar. When Lord Chaitanya heard this, he was in absolute raptures. And Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that the two of them spent hours and hours, in fact, the entire night, discussing these esoteric pastimes of Radharani and Krishna. And they wept in ecstasy, they chanted, they danced. So this was Srila Ramananda Raya and Lord Chaitanya's dialogue. And I connected it to the Varnas that were mentioned in the purport, the Bhagavatam purport that I read earlier, because I'm now coming to the topic that I want to talk about. Before I get into that topic, I wanted to point out one thing. In Bhagavatam 3.13.3, Vidura is addressing Maitreya Muni, and he mentions, "O best of the virtuous, the original king of kings, Manu, was a great devotee of the personality of Godhead, Hari. And thus it is worth hearing of his sublime character and activities. Please describe them. I am very eager to hear." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees. In the absolute world, there is no difference in quality between the Supreme Lord and his pure devotee. Therefore, hearing the topics of the Lord and hearing of the character and activities of the pure devotee have the same result, namely the development of devotional service. So, with that reflection, I wanted to share. So, when we hear pastimes of pure devotees of the Lord, actually any devotees of the Lord, it is extremely purifying and elevating for us. I once asked Srila Giriraj Swami, why is it that hearing about Srila Prabhupada brings so much pleasure to the heart? Why sometimes do I feel that that's even more nectarian than hearing about the pastimes of Krishna? And I was a little afraid because I thought I was being a little offensive. Like I love Prabhupada's pastimes even more than hearing about Krishna's pastimes. And Giriraj Swami gave a great answer. He said, because the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and any pure devotee are nothing but pure ecstasies in devotional service related to their service to the Supreme Lord. And therefore, when you hear about the pastimes of the devotees, you cannot but help hearing Harikatha as well, because they do not do anything that is separated from their love for their beloved Lord. And because it's the concept as they describe, as Prabhupada describes at one place, when a guava is tasted by a parrot and then you eat that guava, it's even sweeter. So similarly, when we hear about the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada and other great devotees, we actually, that guava of the pastimes of Krishna is even sweeter. And so we experience even greater ecstasy. So with that reflection and the scriptural backing that we just saw, I would now like to proceed into the topic for the day. But I'm going to excuse myself for just 1 second. Thank you. So we saw how Vidura is very eager to hear about the original king of kings, Manu. Why? Because he is a devotee, a pure devotee of the Supreme Godhead. So with that, today is the disappearance day of Srila Madhavendra Puri. And we see in this beautiful picture, Madhavendra Puri is sitting on the banks of Govind Kund, and Krishna appears as a little boy with a pot of milk to offer to him. Madhavendra Puri was so renounced, he would never beg for alms. If something came, someone brought him food, he would eat, otherwise he would just fast. And he would happily chant the holy names. That was his taste in Krishna consciousness. And so Krishna himself brought this pot of milk to him because he couldn't bear to see Madhavendra Puri not eating anything. So today being his disappearance day, I want to talk about his departure pastime. So as Srila Madhavendra Puri approached his final days, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 8 of Antyalila, verse 19 describes Puri Gosani Kare Krishna Nama Sankirtana Mathurana Paino Bali Karena Krandana. Madhavendra Puri was chanting the holy name of Krishna, and sometimes he would cry, "Oh my Lord, I did not get shelter at Mathura." His own disciple Ramachandra Puri, who was with him, Kaviraj Goswami describes he was so foolish, this Ramachandra Puri, that he fearlessly dared to instruct his spiritual master. Now, at this point, it's worth reflecting. So, Madhavendra Puri, I discussed the dialogues of Ramananda Raya and Lord Chaitanya, and we talked about Vipralamba, the feeling that the gopis have of separation from Krishna, which in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition is described as the highest expression of love of a living entity for Krishna. Not feeling that, oh, I'm so connected with Krishna, but always thinking, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Why am I in this material world? What have I done to be separated from you, Krishna? And constantly searching after him and feeling his presence in our heart. And in that mood, Srila Madhavendra Puri was crying, "Oh my Lord, I did not get shelter at Mathura." Now, he was actually the highest devotee, but the highest devotees actually feel that they have no taste for chanting, they have no taste for bhakti. And so he was crying in his dying days, "I did not get shelter at Mathura." His own disciple Ramchandra Puri, who had heard from his spiritual master over many years, actually thought he had completely misunderstood the teachings that his spiritual master Madhavendra Puri had taught him. And he started to instruct his spiritual master. "If you are in full transcendental bliss," Ramchandra Puri said, "you should now only remember Brahman. Why are you crying?" So Ramachandra Puri completely misunderstood the teachings of his spiritual master and started to tell him, "Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na Shochati na Kanchati." As Krishna says, that one who is situated in Brahman is in full transcendental bliss. He does not lament and does not hanker. And so he misunderstood these feelings of separation of his guru and started telling him, "You should only remember Brahman. Why are you crying?" Madhavendra Puri, when he heard this, he got very angry. Now, you see, everything that a pure devotee does is meant to instruct the populace at large. So there is a lot of instructions from this particular pastime, and I'll touch on them briefly as we get into the next few verses. So Madhavendra Puri's lamentation was not material. He was experiencing the highest form of divine love, love in separation. He banished his disciple Ramachandra Puri. Due to his offense, gradually material desire appeared within the heart of Ramachandra Puri. And so this chapter, chapter 8 of Antyalila, describes the condition of Ramachandra Puri. And we'll only have time for a few verses, and our focus will be Madhavendra Puri, not his disciple Ramachandra Puri. But it's instructive to nonetheless realize that the mood of the guru is not something that the disciple should presume he or she knows. If you have a bona fide guru, and there are many tests that the scriptures prescribe for how to divine if someone is a bona fide guru or not. If you have a bona fide guru, you should listen with submission. Sure, you should ask your doubts. That's the natural sign of intelligence. But you should accept the words coming from the guru as absolute, because the guru does not concoct anything, does not say anything that is for his personal benefit. He's only repeating the words of the previous acharyas who are repeating the words of Sri Krishna. And I remember when I was an early bhakta many, many years ago, maybe 20, 21 years ago, I was traveling with my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, and we were in Gitanagari. And I was driving him around and I was trying to do some personal services for him, which he didn't need, but he tolerated because he could see it was enlivening for me. And there was another person who was assisting my Guru Maharaj, and we were serving him together. And I remember the words of a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Mahamuni Prabhu, who was at that time from St. Louis. He came upon us after 3 or 4 days of watching us serve at Gitanagari, serve our Guru. And he said, you guys, I see you chanting your rounds and you run around and do things and you're driving him around and you're taking care of his personal needs. But when do you read scripture? And so we said, Mamuni Prabhu, we barely have time to like finish our rounds every day. And we have Maharaj is doing 4 or 5 hours of programs and there is so much else to do and, serve him and so on and so forth. And he said, no. He said, if you do not read scripture, you will fall into the error of thinking that your guru is the external body that he is inhabiting, and you will start to make offenses to your guru. He said, reading scripture every single day and hearing from your guru and trying to follow in the footsteps and in the mood of your guru is the paramount duty of a disciple. Only then will he or she get elevated. And that instruction, given all these years ago, has stayed with me, and I think of it almost every single day. And when we read passages like this, you immediately remember how dangerous this path can be, especially if we feel the need to correct our seniors, what to speak of correcting our guru. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to this verse, Antilila 8:26, if one becomes an offender to his spiritual master or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he falls down to the material platform to merely speculate. One who is attached to dry speculative knowledge has no relationship with Krishna. His occupation is criticizing Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya taught us that the number one offense we must guard against is criticizing someone who is trying to advance on the path of bhakti, criticizing a Vaishnav or a Vaishnavi. And this subject itself is so vast, I won't go into it right now, but as aspiring devotees, as some of us are, and some of you are advanced devotees, but as aspiring devotees, we must remember that what we think is justified observations or statements of fact might in fact be taken as offensive. So if you have children and you have, say, 2 children or 3 children, and they constantly offend each other or fight amongst each other, you as the parent will be most distressed. And in fact, if one is offensive and the other two are not, then you will probably want to punish the person who is offending your other children. Similarly, Krishna has no tolerance for someone who is criticizing a devotee. And so this is something which must always be in the back of our head. Now, it doesn't mean if we see something grossly wrong, we don't point it out or talk about it, but there are appropriate ways to do it while still following Vaishnava etiquette. So, Ramachandra Puri was offensive, and this chapter goes on later on to describe how he fell down from his position of being with his guru and being on the path of bhakti, and he started to find faults not just with the Vaishnavas, but ultimately he found faults with Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Srila Ishvara Puri, on the other hand, served his guru, Srila Madhavendra Puri, personally in his final days. He served him, Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, in ways that were very intimate, even because Madhavendra Puri's body had wasted away and he couldn't even do his bodily functions. And Ishvara Puri would clean him and help him do his bodily functions. And more than that, Ishvara Puri would constantly sing to him about Krishna. He would read from Srimad Bhagavatam. He would remind his guru of the pastimes of Krishna. And in this way, he helped Madhavendra Puri to remember Krishna at the time of his passing. At the time of his departure, Srila Madhavendra Puri was chanting one verse in particular. But before we get there, Chaitanya Charitamrita describes Ramachandra Puri earned his guru's ire, whereas another disciple, Ishvara Puri, earned his guru's benediction to become a great devotee and lover of Krishna. In fact, Srila Ishvara Puri, by his guru's blessings, became the guru of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. He became Lord Chaitanya's guru. Chaitanya Charitamrita Antilila 833 Jagat Guru Madhavendra Kari Premadana Ei Shloka Padi Tenho Kaila Antardhana. His Divine Grace Madhavendra Puri, Srila Prabhupada translates it, the spiritual master of the entire world, thus distributed ecstatic love for Krishna through his life, through his teachings, through his example, and the disciples that he had. He had Ishvara Puri, the guru of the Supreme Person, Lord Chaitanya, as his disciple. He had Advaita Acharya as his disciple. He had many, many other disciples. Some texts say Nityananda Prabhu was his disciple. Some other texts say Lakshmi Pati, Madhavendra Puri's own guru, was Nityananda's disciple. But regardless, Madhavendra Puri taught the entire world ecstatic love for Krishna. While passing away from this world, he chanted the following verse. Ai dina dayardra nath hai, mathura nath kada avalokyase, hridayam tvad aloka kataram, daita brahmyati kim karumyaham. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita 8.34. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? So, at the time of his departure from this world, Madhavendra Puri was completely absorbed in the mood of separation from Krishna, and he constantly repeated the shlok that I just showed. This verse is considered by Gaudiya Vaishnavas to be the essence of expression of the mood of separation from Krishna, the mood of longing. Beginning from Madhvacharya down to the spiritual master of Madhavendra Puri, the Acharya named Lakshmipati, there was no expression of devotional service in the mellow of conjugal love. Sri Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of conjugal love for the first time in the Madhvacharya Sampradaya, of whom we are a part. We follow in the Brahma Madhvacharya Sampradaya. When Sri Krishna left Vrindavan and accepted the kingdom of Mathura, Srimati Radharani, out of ecstatic feelings of separation, expressed her feelings, and she showed how Krishna is loved in separation. Thus, devotional service in separation is central to this verse that Madhavendra Puri was chanting at the time that he departed from the world. The devotee in this conception of separation thinks of himself or herself as very poor and neglected by the Lord. Thus, he addresses the Lord as Dina Dayadranath, as did Madhavendra Puri. Because Krishna had gone to Mathura, Srimati Radharani was very affected, and she expressed herself, "My dear Lord, because of your separation, my mind has become so agitated. Now tell me, what can I do? I am very poor and you are very merciful. So please have compassion upon me and let me know when I shall see you again." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always expressing the ecstatic emotions of Srimati Radharani that she exhibited in separation from Krishna. And she showed those emotions, for example, when Uddhava visited Vrindavan. Similar feelings expressed by Madhavendra Puri are expressed in this verse. And therefore, Vaishnavas in the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya say that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the ecstatic feelings that he experienced and displayed when he appeared on this planet, they came from Sri Madhavendra Puri through Ishvara Puri. Our Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada and Thakur Bhaktivinoda and Bhakti Siddhanta, they talk about this. They talk about how Madhavendra Puri was the first shoot of the desire tree of divine love that came out of the Madhva lineage. Prior to his appearance, there was no sign of the conjugal mood of devotion in the Madhva line. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta says that the feeling of separation from Krishna or transcendental Vipralambha is the only practice by which the spirit soul can achieve perfection. Material feelings of separation give rise to a despondency that reveals the attachment that one has for matter, whereas the dependency that results from feelings of separation from our Murlidhar are the best proof of one's desire to bring pleasure to Murlidhar's senses. The desire to bring pleasure to Krishna's senses that is shown by Madhavendra Puri is the ideal example to follow for anyone who wishes to serve the Lord. It is especially worth remarking that Mahaprabhu and his closest followers later adopted this example and made it their standard. So this was Srila Bhakti Siddhanta expressing himself. So I do want to have one or two more discussion points, and then we can open it up for questions, corrections, and comments. So let me share my screen again. So in preparing for this class, one of the classes that I heard was by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, the great, wonderful speaker, monk from Chowpatty. And he coined an acronym for Srila Madhavendra Puri, which I wanted to share with everyone. P for pure, U for unassuming, R for resourceful, and I for intent. And every one of these words we can talk about for hours, because Madhavendra Puri's life is so exemplary and it's so inspiring. His purity is beyond question. Yesterday in her beautiful class, Achyuta Gopi Devi, she talked about how Madhavendra Puri found the deity of Gopal, how he organized the service of Gopal. And when he was asked by Gopal in a dream to go on an arduous journey to get sandalwood because he was feeling so hot after being hidden underground for so many years, he immediately left. His purity was beyond question. He constantly chanted the holy names of Krishna, and he had no desire other than to just express his devotional sentiments and share them with others. The second point that comes out from Madhavendra Puri's life is he was unassuming. Now, in Madhavendra Puri's life, we hear that Sri Krishna either appeared to him or personally intervened in his life 5 distinct times. Now, some of you are, maybe on the platform where if Krishna appears to you personally, and maybe he does, you still remain the unassuming souls you are. But if I know for myself, if those kind of interventions happen in my life, I would be probably subtly talking about it or grossly talking about it and maybe sharing on social media that, Muralidhar appeared to me yesterday, and he told me, do this and do that. But Madhavendra Puri was averse to the fame that came from the knowledge that spread about how Gopinath stole the kheer personally for Madhavendra Puri. The fame that came from Gopal bringing him milk or appearing to him in a dream to say, dig me out of here. And he never, ever let go of his mantle of humility, which was not an artificial mantle. It's how he genuinely identified himself as completely fallen, and how could Krishna appear to someone like me? And so that mood is very, very inspiring for all of us aspiring sadhakas to remember and meditate on this day in particular. So the third word, R, resourceful. And when I was studying for Srila Madhavendra, for this class about Srila Madhavendra Puri, one point struck me, that this most exalted of devotees, who was experiencing the emotions that are experienced only by the gopis of Vrindavan, this particular devotee, he was not head in the clouds, and just living on a very abstract level. He was also the most resourceful and the most expert. Krishna describes in 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one of the qualities of a devotee is that he's daksha, he's expert. And Madhavendra Puri shows that through his life, how he organized the worship of Gopalji in Vrindavan, how he immediately, when he set out for his pilgrimage, he was resourceful. He didn't give any thought to, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? He was surrendered to the will of the Lord. And when he got fame because Gopinath stole the kheer for him, he used that fame to procure the sandalwood and camphor that Gopal had asked him to procure. And he didn't say, "Oh, I've become famous. Let me just sit, and pretend to be a showman and showman devotee, and then just live the rest of my life comfortably." He immediately used whatever was given to him simply to serve Krishna. So he was resourceful. And immediately when I read that and I thought about it, I remembered our Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, as many devotees attest in their memories and in their memoirs, he experienced ecstasies of the highest order, and he didn't show them in public very often. But we know from his writings and from his talks that he was a devotee in the absolute highest order of devotees. But yet he was so expert and he was so resourceful in organizing everything. So something for us to meditate on this day. And the last point in the acronym Puri is I, and that stands for intent or determination. Madhavendra Puri, when he was asked by Gopal to go get the sandalwood, he pursued a journey that, quite frankly, is not an easy journey. And I want to show it to you visually. So, this is a far off shot, the journey that he made. And I will go to the next page that shows more close up. He started from Vrindavan and he traversed a distance of 1,944 kilometers. That's by today's roads. So who knows how it was, because he was going through the jungles, he was on foot. Many of those jungles were inhabited by dacoits, by tigers, by snakes, and he was traversing through various kingdoms, including Muslim-ruled kingdoms who didn't really care for Hindu mendicants. He traversed that and he went from Vrindavan to Shantipur, where he met Advaitacharya. He stayed with him. He initiated him. Then he went to Remuna. That's where the famous pastime of Gopinath stealing kheer happened. From there, he went to Puri to escape the fame that he got from this pastime of Gopinath stealing kheer for him. And there, when devotees or many of the souls in Puri heard about his this pastime, they came forward to offer him sandalwood and camphor. And then he organized the trip back. And along the way, Gopal again appeared to him in a dream and said, "I'm none different from Gopinath in Remuna. So I don't want you to, go through this arduous journey all over again, carrying hundreds of pounds of sandalwood and camphor. Just offer it to Gopinath and I will be pleased." And so this journey, when you see it visually, you realize the intent and the determination of this great soul in serving the Supreme Person, Krishna. So these are some thoughts. I beg your pardon for any mistakes I might have made. I was speaking the most elevated topics from my position of being the most fallen. So please forgive me. And at this moment, if there are any comments, corrections, or questions, do we have time, Gaur Sharan Prabhu?
Hi, Krishna. Thank you so much, Yasoda Dulal Prabhu. Yes, for sure, we have time, Prabhu. You can, the devotees, please feel free to unmute yourself to ask any questions, appreciation, comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for your lecture. It was really amazing. I have one question which is kind of simple, but I feel like I will die if I don't give an answer. And it's simply that, it's so easy to commit offenses against the spiritual master, especially in the early stages. And I feel like I am definitely far away from constantly remembering that, his body is completely spiritualized. This is a pure devotee. I have to really kind kind of be on guard and behave like I am around a pure devotee. And simultaneously, I do want to be close to pure devotees. And so it's like, how do we balance that? Avoiding offenses and getting their mercy by their association as well.
Thank you for this question. I see the deities just opened, and we'll get to the darshan in a few short minutes. So I'll paraphrase what Krishna tells Arjuna: by constant practice and detachment. But I'll also add, in this context, in the context of your question, by regularly reading Shastra, these books that Srila Prabhupada has written, Bhagavad Gita as it is, they're not meant to be kept as it is, on the shelf. We're supposed to take them out every day and read them. And when we read the words of Srila Prabhupada, when we hear talks by him, I love to hear Srila Prabhupada's lectures in his own words. Sometimes, if you cannot follow his accent, you can find on YouTube some videos with the transcriptions on screen. But it has a very powerful effect on our heart. And then, by staying close to devotees who are serving Srila Prabhupada really, really nicely, and taking guidance and humbling ourselves. And when we do all these things, when we do some service, we constantly remember what our eternal position is. And then, even if these thoughts come to our mind, we are able to banish them on the superior strength of the Shastras and of the Acharya's words. Hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, Kaursharan Prabhu, can you focus on Radha Muralidhar, Shri Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu, and Vara Narasimhadev? Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitai Gaur
Yes,
Bhakti.
Yasoda Dulal Prabhu ki Jai. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Radha Muralidhar, Shri Gaurachandra Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Vara Narasimhadev Bhagwan ki Jai.